What's up? I can't. Is the problem in the connection? Hello?
Hello. Welcome to an episode of Realistically. Today, a show where we deconstruct the current events of the week. Today, we have Booker Omole from the Communist Party of Kenya here to discuss what's going on this week in Kenya. So how are you doing, Booker?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Isha, for this invitation, especially at this moment that we have, the current event in our country.
Okay. So can we get started with the basics for people who are not familiar? Who is William Ruto?
First of all, we have to understand William Ruto from what he's been in historical context within Kenya. William Ruto joined politics way back when he was a student under the strong dictator William, not William Samoei Ruto, but dictator Moi. So he was the youth leader. He had an outfit known as YK-92. That was a right-wing militia that terrorized people during the President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi's dictatorship during that time. It's also important that the oxymoron of this behavior, he was also a devoted Christian. He was actually a member of the Christian Union who always preaches how all power comes from above. That is what we need to understand, the context. And then he has participated in politics from then. And during the fall of Dictator Moi, him and a few others, left the establishment at that time called KANU, and he joined other politicians. But the history of atrocities has continued to follow him. Remember, during the 2007 post-election violence, Ruto was one of the people that were indicted for having created ethnic cleansing of people. He was one person that was indicted and even listed for trial, even though we don't support the International Criminal Court as an imperialist outfit, but he holds one of the highest responsibilities for the massacre of the ethnic Kikuyus in the Kalenjin community. So he's one man who believed in tribal mobilization, and he has not just financed, but also participated in mobilization of ethnic militia during the 1997-2007. But fortunately enough, this time when he became the deputy president in, just after the 2007 post-election violence, and he shared political power with his predecessor, the son of the Jomo Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta, at that time. They led a very ethnic and skewed campaigns to be able to make themselves to State House and to outmaneuver the other competitors in the name of ethnic propaganda. So we cannot say that President Ruto, at this time, we do not know him. We know him exactly very well. But now, only now that he took political power, there were, annihilations. We did not have proofs that the people that wanted him to be in power in Kenya were actually the CIA office that is run in the United States Embassy here in Nairobi and the IMF and World Bank. But now his behavior after being promulgated or having taken the instruments of power only confirms to us that President William Samoei Ruto is the dog of the United States. He is a puppet of the United States. Remember, and this has been proven with a clear evidence now. For example, I will give you a few things that can relate the United States imperialism interest in the country that the president has indeed advanced. Remember, Isha, President William Samoei Ruto has not been in power for more than 3 years. How is it possible that the biggest military airbase, United States military airbase, has been built in a record 2 years in our country? That confirms that this is.
What year did they do that?
William Samoei Ruto, after the elections in the 2022, and now we're in 2024, in a record 2 years, he has built one of the biggest military air bases, United States military air bases, in the African continent, in Nigeria, then in Northeast. And when he visited the United States, remember, the Joe Biden administration was actually warming up to declare Kenya as a NATO ally. This is not a mistake. This was a preparatory, because remember, the United States military air bases are facing closure in the western part of western part of Africa. So the United States was looking for a home for his military equipment, military hardware, military power. But who was the best person to deal in this manner was President William Samoei Ruto. So everything else, remember, the Finance Bill 2024, that is the spark of the current protest that is underway in Nairobi, was not just something out of the skies or the blues. This was, an advancement of resistance that has been taking place since the 2023 Finance Bill that was already scripted by CIA, supported by IMF and World Bank. So this is a man who is captured by the United States imperialism that has no use for the Kenyan people. In fact, sometimes, even though we fight him, we sympathize with him. He can make any decision on his own. He has to always retire to State House to make phone calls to White House to consult on what to say and what to do. Even when the country arose against him, the entire country arose against him. He couldn't do anything until, now people say the United States ambassador here, the Megwhite, is his mother, because every time he has to consult her before he rolls out an anti-people policy. So that is the situation, that is the man we are dealing with here in Kenya. And probably, maybe he is more safer in the United States, in Washington, than in Nairobi. Everybody doesn't want him. Ruto stinks with imperialism. He stinks with corruption. He's a man that is, it's sad that he's alive today, because his policies, his behavior injures the majority of the people in Kenya today.
That makes sense. One quick, thank you so much, Final Forest 1980, and thank you so much, Nomo Popo, for your donations. We need it a lot. Okay, so the next question I have to ask is what, okay, so I heard that he wanted to raise taxes in a regressive manner in this finance bill. Can you talk about that?
Comrade, we have always talked about progressive taxation. That is not something we have not talked about as the Communist Party of Kenya and progressive organization. What it basically means is that we want the government of the day to tax where the money is, and not necessarily where people are. But when the IMF and World Bank talks about expanding the tax bracket, it means that you tax the people to cushion a few people to make profit. Essentially, that is the cause of the problem of the Finance Bill 2023 and the Finance Bill 2024, where we have the government taxing in the most silly manner. The government is taxing where the majority people get their livelihood. Remember, the Russian Revolution was about land and bread. Now we have the government want to attack the basic interest of survival of the working class in our country. For example, the online revolution that you're seeing from the TikTokers influencers, the X influencers, and the big YouTubers in the country, it's not that the consciousness has come from a theoretical front. It has come from a practical front that the government now is targeting to give to give a tax burden to the majority of the Kenyan youths that are very resilient. In fact, they have turned to online content creation to try and pay their bills because the government of the day cannot offer them employment with dignity. Even though they are content creators and they drive opinions across and they have many followers, you need to tell me that these people that are victims of the an incompetent government only they only want to make money through digital content are being taxed at 5% of the earnings. And even though the 35% is not a plain tax, remember there are also other taxes like the housing levy, the value-added tax. We also have the proposed the car levy tax. The last year, in fact, the most annoying part of it is that after the government introduced the housing or what they're calling the rent tax, the big landlord actually switched off the taxation, the tax, and they failed to pay it. So the real anger of the Kenyan people is that all the policies that have been passed through the Kenya Kwanza administration and President William Samoei's have actually, introduced immense suffering on the Kenyan people. Remember, comrade, at the center of our struggle in Kenya today also have land issues. Land is at the center of our struggle. Now, if you want to introduce land levies for small-scale landowners and people who are, barely paying the cost of the land through the loaning system, but big landlords that are mainly politicians are exempted from it. If you talk about the taxation, why are they not talking about pre-tax? They are only talking about individuals paying tax. The tax regime that has been introduced by IMF is an attack on all social, rights of the Kenyan people. And that is why we have to actually advance in terms of rejecting these proposed laws. And it's very cunning for him because last test forced him to withdraw the signing of the finance bill into law. But the truth of the matter is that he has not stopped keeping still lies to the Kenyan people, because after that he signed the appropriation bill to allow him to spend more money, while the interest of the Kenyan people was that the finance bill is actually a product of IMF and World Bank. And what the Kenyan people want him to do is to start a new process to discuss from below the national interest of the Kenyan people without the external interference. And the Kenyan people are saying that any blood that was spilled in the streets of Nairobi are squarely not just in the hands of William Samoei Ruto and his Eastern backers, but this blood belongs to IMF and World Bank that have continued to terrorize the working class and the poor people in the global south for many years. But at this time, the Kenyan people have said no to IMF, no to the neocolonial system that continues to be dominated, and no to President Ruto.
So, can you talk a little bit about the protest that happened this week and the events that happened during the protest?
It's important to acknowledge that the protesters confirmed our correct analysis from the Communist Party of Kenya and other progressive organizations that in history there is nothing absolutely that has been given to the Kenyan people without the struggle. In fact, when we talk about the class struggle or the struggle of the poor people, anything that the working class, anything that the poor people have gotten in this country, there has been blood, there has been martyrdom, and there has been pain for the majority of the people. So the protests that have actually been in the last, actually not more than even a month, has only proven the correct line that anything that we will get from this corrupt regime will not be through negotiation. It will be through resistance, and it will be through a defiance in terms of forcing the ruling class to roll back the anti-people policies and actually come clearly to implement the pro-people policies. The protest started from the finance bill, but the ruling class have some arrogance. In fact, the protests were a defiance of the arrogance of the ruling class here at home, which is a super minority. But they thought that the protest will fizzle out through police crackdown. Just the 2023 protests were actually, were defeated by organized state violence. In that case, then we have to bring out that the protest in our country was not just about the finance bill, but it was about deliberate interference by international capital and our former colonizers, and supported by the United States imperialism on our internal affairs. In fact, when you hear the youth in the street were saying, we want accountability, we want to know this debt that you're saying that you want to tax us to pay, what is the amount of debt? We want we want a clear debt audit so they understand. So the Kenyan people know clearly what they're actually fighting for. So they talk about, remember, a peaceful protest, because the protests in these countries were by and large very peaceful. In fact, today we were discussing with some of my comrades that even the young people came to the streets, and these young people were carrying only flowers. Sometimes they were raising their hands. But what did the police do? What did organized violence of the police do to these young people? They massacred the young people, murdered them, shot them. They were charged by the police. They were tear gassed by the police. The police used the batons. There were water guns on the street. So the non-violence were met by, a little organized violence by the state. So the question that we've been asking is that maybe the only equalizer to the police violence is not to raise our hands anymore, because it means that more blood will be shed on the streets of Nairobi when we surrender to the police violence. This violent reaction only showed that, remember, when the bourgeois are actually facing a defeat in their national politics, what do? They want to divide people based on certain social aspects. For example, they want to call an ethnic division. This protest in Nairobi were beyond ethnic divisions. Everybody, every tribe rose against the anti-poor policies of President William Samoei Ruto. So it basically means that president's war machinery, the president propaganda machinery, could not demobilize based on tribe, religion. It could not demobilize people based on divisions, based on social contracts. This is important to acknowledge that the defeat of the propaganda that now went to a violent confrontation with the movement that were in the streets of Nairobi was only based that the normal routine that the politicians used to divide the local population actually defeated in the street by majority of the young people that did not see Ruto as just a Kalenjin or a member of a particular tribe, but they saw him in his true colors as somebody that is a danger to the future of this country. This for us as revolutionaries, our hearts, for the first time in my country, we had to counter the propaganda of the ruling class and tell the Kenyan people that we have two tribes in Kenya, which is the haves and the have-nots. But this is also something that we have to understand that last elections, President Ruto used the class rhetoric to mobilize the people. He says that the fight is between the haves and the have-not, which in his own words, he says, I am representing the hustlers versus the dynasties, in his own words. This is what is haunting Ruto, because the young people that were promised jobs are asking us, are asking themselves, this is the person who promised us jobs, and he said that hustlers, we are the haves, the have-nots. How is it possible that in his cabinet, in his government, all the policies and all the appointees are still the landlord class, are still from the rich billionaire class? So this is a scam. That's what they're saying. In fact, if you ask any person in our country, what do they know Ruto for? Even the people cannot relate him with the United States imperialism will clearly tell you he's a liar. You know, so even now when he's challenged politically, he has probably reduced the arrogance because he's under threat. But he has not stopped lying on what to save his face. But he is a silly person, because the crisis facing our country, you cannot solve it through talk. He has to provide decent jobs with dignity. He needs to roll out policies to provide education. All these things he will not do when IMF advisors are surrounding him in the State House. Remember, the economists, what we call the pink economists that have been sponsored by IMF and World Bank to advise him on turnaround the economy, will not allow him to roll out the people's program. In fact, the IMF categorically that we actually are concerned about the level of corruption and wastage in William Samoei Ruto's government. So he is one that is abandoned by even the people who have sponsored this crisis. This is what he must know, that the imperialist countries do not have friendship. They do not have principles. And if they sponsor you as, to represent their interests as their puppet, by the time you lose popular support from your people, they will recruit some people in the streets. Because today we had robust reflections to see the dangers that is facing the ongoing protest in Kenya. But you have to understand that the Soros are here, the open society is here, who is trying to turn around and, and make this what they're calling a colored revolution. You saw the flowers on the streets to represent, every time you see some segment of demonstrators trying to carry pink flowers and red flowers, then you remember that the open society, which is the biggest disruptor or progressive, like, look at the Black Lives Matter, look at the colored revolutions that ever happened, and look at the Soros' hands and open society. So we are fighting not just a fight of life and death, but we are surrounded, not the enemy of the state, but the big NGOs like USAID, UK Aid, they are trying to pump in money to drive their political agenda. Remember, the mainstream media in our country is saying that this movement is leaderless. They want to make it leaderless, partyless, tribeless, and they want to say that the young people just all of a sudden got into the street. They want to promote it as an anarchist movement.
That sounds just like what they tried to do in Hong Kong a few years ago.
Yes, absolutely. So the script is actually the same, but also we predicted that. We always tell the Kenyan masses that the last bastion of the bourgeoisie is actually the military. So currently the president has deployed the military in the streets, but the military were welcomed with love in the streets. This is interesting, because when the Kenyan people received the military in the street, it was all, celebratory mode. And the military did not shoot anyone. They were actually more friendly than the police. So the Kenyan people are actually saying that probably the military is actually a good friend of Kenyan people than the police that has been used to brutalize the Kenyan people. What does this show, Ruto? For a fact that when the military will comply and support the people's camp, then President William Samoei Ruto government will come, like a house of cards. It will come tumbling down. What I don't know is that after deploying the military, what will maybe now that he says that he was a man that ordained by God to rule, maybe we'll deploy sanctions, but we don't know what will protect him from the people's wrath.
I mean, that makes sense. Okay, so can I quickly ask a question about the police? I read reports that the Kenyan police is notoriously corrupt. Is that true?
First of all, it is not just corruption based on individuals searching for money for their own upkeep. The Kenyan police system, the corruption is systemic. That means even the police bosses are actually putting corruption targets for junior traffic officers on the road. So that means if you are deployed on a particular road, you are expected that in the evening you have collected like such amount of bribe. And if you don't collect such amount of bribe and bring to your boss, then you are transferred to the remotest places in the country. So
it encourages police to fine people for no reason like that, right?
In fact, it's not just police fining people. It's police literally asking for bribes. There's no fine. They look at you in the car. They say, "Oh, okay, you have broken windscreen, or you have some small issues with your car, so you have to pay for it, or your car is towed to the police station."
Is extortion.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just police extortion. But also remember that the Kenyan police live in the most, the worst social conditions in Kenya. They live in really shanties. They live like animals with no social amenity. You go where the police families live, they don't have running water, they don't have electricity, they only are there with their clothes and make AK-47. So the system has condemned the Kenyan policemen to certain way that even though they collect big bribes, these big bribes only benefits their seniors, but not the junior officers. So this is the crisis of capitalism. The fact that the living standard of state workers are anchored on only corrupt activity that is being tolerated by their bosses. So if you talk about, for example, Kenya is rolling out the anti-corruption activities. So they publish things in the police station. This is a free this is a free corruption zone. But the anti-corruption commission that's in charge of these, that should be in charge of investigating and prosecuting corrupt people. Remember, in Kenya, corruption and theft, I don't want to call it corruption because it is just theft. People, for example, if you budget for 84 million Kenya shillings for a cancer center and you just steal the whole of it, this for me is not corruption. This is just theft. People just taking money from the state coffers. So that is how the majority of the rich minority in our country are actually political leaders. How do you make money through politics other than stealing from the public coffers? This is something that annoys the young people. When we are on the street, look at these comrades. You have people driving big guzzlers, exclusive luxury cars in the middle of a slum area with no running water, where the children are running around totally without clothing, without water. They think driving, a 20 million car in this neighborhood to try and look for vote. For me, this, I think, the conscience of these politicians is not there. Remember, these people steal a lot of money and they put in designer clothes. They are putting on Gucci watch, luxury items in the middle of abject poverty. This is what has contributed to the annoyance of young people. They're saying, no, kill them all. How is it possible that we don't have food, we don't have clothing, we don't have money for education? and then we don't have money for education, and then these people comes in, and when they come in, they come in the most opulent way. They are flying with helicopters. They remember the last trip that president made to the United States. He had one of the most luxury jets, from Dubai, and people are like, why can't you fly on a commercial airline to promote our airline? Because our airline is struggling. So these are just people that are soulless. They are totally interested on not the interest of the people, but only their personal interest. This is the annoyance in the street.
Okay, I have a question. What exactly? So yesterday or the day before, it said that they sent Kenyan police to Haiti for peacekeeping. What exactly are they doing in Haiti, and why?
This is one thing that the Communist Party has talked about before and issued statement that the issue of Haiti is also another manifestation to confirm to the Kenyan people that William Samoei Ruto is basically working for the interest of the core group, mainly Canada, the the France, the German, and the United States. Because if you remember the speech that was delivered by the president in support of the deployment of the police in the illegal actually deployment of police in Haiti, it was scripted by the CIA to bring out that it was a Pan-Africanist act. It was an act of solidarity of the black movement to support the Haitian brothers and sisters. This is not something that is unprecedented in Kenya. Remember, when the wave for socialism was building after independence in 1960s, the CIA created and morphed, a disruptor by the name Tombo, who drafted a paper that was called African Socialism, to try and say that African socialism is the best alternative to the socialist principles that is anchored on scientific environment. So they created a stooge to drive something that calling itself African socialism. Now the same CIS and imperialism are using the concept of Pan-Africanism and black solidarity to justify put boots on ground to support the United States imperialism in Port-au-Prince, in Haiti. This for us is very annoying. And remember, Kenya has have a very disturbing history. We are one country, comrade, that we never supported a freedom movement in Africa. How is it possible that the ruling class in Kenya always wants to only have a foreign policy of wait and see where we can get something? For example, Kenya was used as a refueling station to attack Uganda. Remember, Zionist outfits and the CIA outfits and the former Scotland Yard outfits operated in our country in the free way possible when the government was complicit with what was happening in the entire globe. So what we are saying is that the majority of the Kenyan people do not support the deployment of the police to Haiti. In fact, they are angry at President Ruto for having done so. The Kenyan police force cannot be a professional police force to be deployed. In fact, the Kenyan police force is known as one of the most brutal against the poor people in this country. The number of massacres that the extrajudicial killings, the police militia that have caused mayhem in our country cannot bring peace in Port-au-Prince or in Haiti in respect to the interest of the people. And remember, comrade, this deployment that has happened to Haiti was challenged in the Kenyan courts and was declared illegal. How is it possible to use the Kenyan police after the Kenyan courts have declared this as unconstitutional and illegal and still continue to deploy? This is the arrogance that we see in the President William Samoei Ruto, that even after the local courts declare things illegal, he find ways to advance such kind of, anti-people propaganda.
So it was declared illegal in the courts, but he ignored the courts and sent it anyway?
Yes, because you see, the deployment of the Kenya police, just like the deployment of the Kenya army, comes with some money to benefit certain individuals. This is a planned corruption. Remember, the money that is going to be paid for an individual policeman are not paid directly to those individual police officers. These monies are paid to in the Kenyan treasury and stolen by the local politicians who actually put the lives of the Kenyan people on the front line to be murdered by, a crisis that has created by French and United States imperialism. Remember, the Haitian people have never been forgiven for having executed the first revolution against the colonial powers. This has been something that the imperialists never forgiven the Haitian brothers and sisters. So we have to look at it that when the imperialist media says that the Haiti is a gang problem issue, as we say, it is not a gang problem issue. It is indeed, a core, a crisis of the core group that is leading the offensive against the people in Haiti.
That makes sense. So I guess so I have a few more questions. It seems like he has withdrawn the bill in Parliament, but what is his plan going to be next?
For a fact, our president is a man that is in big problems, because now that even if he goes through liberal democratic processes, through electoral processes, he cannot win elections. So what are his options? Wants to deploy the military. Maybe if the protests continue, he thinks in his head that he can suspend the constitution, declare state of emergency, and rule as a dictator. But he does not know that Kenya has changed. We have very strong revolutionary centers and progressive centers that will not allow him to move on into a dictator and suspend the constitution. This is one thing that we have to bring across. Now, in terms of the legal environment that we're dealing with, remember, if normally the president will refuse to sign a bill because the bill has been supported by parliament that is pro-people. Then taken to, this was the historical place that the bill passes through the parliament, and since this bill is popular among the people, but the president don't want it, he will refuse to sign it. So progressively, the Constitution 2010 said categorically that if the president refuses to sign the bill, even after being passed in parliament, the bill actually becomes law in exactly, in 14 to 21 days. Effect. So that means even if the president withdraws the bill, if nothing happens, the bill will still become a law. This was something the Constitution only looked at it on the part that at that time there was a clash between the parliamentarians that were P and the executive that was anti-P. But this time, the parliamentarians are anti-people because they're actually a vote crowd in parliament. Before this finance bill was debated in parliament, President William Samoei mobilized his members of parliament to State House, mainly to corrupt them to pass this anti-people bill. This is and it's even now in public domain that the MPs are confirming that the president gave them 2 million shillings to vote for this bill.
Wow.
This is what we're talking about. And the finance bill 2024, even though the president has suspended it, the president is still on the attack. In fact, today he has published what he's calling a consultative of the young people in a way to derail us, not to focus on our main primary goal, which is to make his government, to make him resign and dissolve the current government and we put a caretaker government to push for a pro-people, progressive, policies that can help the Kenyan people to develop. This is what the president thinks he is. He thinks he's more clever. He thinks we are children, so he can lie to us and play just politics with our life. For example, I just said before in the show that the president has already signed the appropriation bill to allow him to expend money. Well, the people were very clear that bill, they have rejected it in totality as an imposition from foreign forces, and they need a new process. This is the irreducible minimum that we have said, and his resignation. So we are waiting for the activities next week. And the next week will be even more hotter for him, because next week is the martyrs day, So we are looking forward to honor the martyrs of the people, which is normally in Kiswahili, we call it Sabasaba, which is the July 7th, 7/7. So that's the day for mobilization against the arrogant powers, not just of the West, but the local arrogant powers. It is a day to honor every blood that has been shed of poor people in the street. So it is going to be another way to intensify the protest against this, incompetent, legitimate, corrupt government that only serves the interest of the foreign powers.
Can the parliament do a vote of no confidence on the president?
They can, but they won't.
They won't.
Okay. In the law, they can, but why they won't? Because the people, remember the parliamentarians, the same people that the parliamentarian were given the opportunity to stop the escalation of the people. In fact, if the parliamentarians did not vote this bill into the third reading, then it was fait accompli. But what did they do? They voted it, and the voting was being aired live. So people were angry that the parliamentarian that should act as a safety net for the majority of the Kenyan people were the people that were auctioning him to an unpopular executive. So in writing, yes, they can pass a vote of no confidence, but we don't need a vote of no confidence from the parliament, because they can't. We already passed the red card. The people have already demonstrated in the street that President William Samoei Ruto is a legitimate president that cannot serve the interest of the majority of the Kenyan people.
So what do you want from the parliament, and what do you want from the president? So I can understand.
We actually don't need anything from parliament. We actually do not need anything from the president at the moment. What we need now is the president must resign. He must dissolve his government, and after that, we must hold the president accountable for the blood that has been shed on the street. We must try him from budgeted corruption and his crimes that he's committed. This is our demands. So we are not hoping that we will still compromise and have debates, negotiation with an outright criminal that came on TV to call demonstrators prisoners. He called the young people in these countries that are committing the act of treason, that they are indeed criminals, and the security architecture of this country will deal with them. Disappropriate. This is the man we are dealing with. So we cannot in any way say that we expect him to be a better person.
That makes sense. So I guess the next protest will be on July 7th. And will it be just in Nairobi, or will it be all over the country?
No. We are going to determine the plans for the next week protest, but it just be on July 7th. We after the pronouncement on Monday, the protest can be on Tuesday, Thursday, but at the peak of it, there will be a national strike on July 7th.
National strike. That means everyone stops work, right?
It's a national strike that will take place in the entire country to force this corrupt regime to actually hand over power that was actually donated to them. The power was given to them by the people temporarily to act in the interest of the people. But the power must return back to the people, so that, because the Constitution of Kenya is quite progressive. It actually says that All the power is in the hands of the Kenyan people, and they can act or use that power indirectly through the representatives that they have elected. And if those representatives that they have elected do not represent the interest, with the golden rule of the constitution is the common interest, then the people can actually exercise their power directly. Now it is the time to exercise our power directly.
And what would that entail?
It basically means that the People's Organization, the National Coordination Committee that is underway, it's being contracted, will come up with the committees to regulate electoral politics and remove each and every person from power, come up with a transitional government, and particularly go back to the constitutional process. In the event that the power falls in the hands of the street, it must not fall in the hands of the super reactionary class. Remember that when power falls in the hands in the street, it can go to military or it can go to the most organized people. Remember in Egypt, for example, the power went to the most reactionary, ultra-right Muslim Brotherhood who were highly organized than the people. This is what the Kenyan people are learning from the Arab Spring, that if the revolutionaries and the progress are not organized, then finally the inevitable power falls in the street. It must not fall in the hands of another reactionary class, but it will fall in the hands of a revolutionary and a progressive class and on the people.
That makes sense. What is Kenya's reactionary class like? What do they believe in? Can you talk a little bit about it? We're not very familiar with it.
First of all, the permanent enemy of the Kenyan people is a class that we call the comprado class, the conveyor belts of national capital, the brokers of our motherland. This class forms the main opposition in our country, and this class also forms the main the actors in government. So if the opposition, even though some of the opposition voted against this finance bill, but we cannot allow that the power leaves the most reactionary class, which is the comprado class, led by William Samoei Ruto, and now comprado class led by the main opposition party in this country. This is totally unacceptable. So the reactionary class that has been propped by mainly extreme evangelicals and right-wing politics that has been, in fact, even now the church is turning around and saying, no, we are supporting the president. But remember, every Sunday, president and his henchmen have been walking into churches with millions of shillings in terms of donations and fundraising. This corruption has taken place since Ruto got into power. So what we are saying clearly, that the reactionary class in our country, both in the opposition and both in the opposition and non-opposition, which is the government, must be defeated with the bare hands of the people for us to start the construction.
And is the evangelical churches, did they come from the US at first, or were they locally grown?
Aisha?
Yes? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you.
Oh, I asked if the evangelical churches were propped up by the US or were they locally grown?
First of all, there are two scenarios. We have the West evangelical, mainly Protestants within the United States. Crusades, Western-sponsored crusades, have been financed by the taxpayers' money in the name of prayer breakfast and praying.
Yeah, we're losing your audio. I don't know if you can hear us, Booker.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay.
Can you repeat what you said, please?
I'm saying that when we are looking at the church and the evangelical movements in our country, we can categorize them into two ways. One is the extreme evangelical.
Yeah, he's
has
been a little bit.
invited to hold prayer meetings.
Can you maybe, if you turn off your video, maybe the audio will work?
And those functions were paid for by the taxpayers' money. And then there are actually other protests here that you can see that even on Sundays, you can see that most people even occupy churches to demonstrate the unholy marriage between the church and the corrupt government. Aisha.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Where can people find you, and where can they learn more about what's going on in Kenya?
Yeah, maybe it's also important to let you know that just to finish the contribution on the churches, the president is still living in the old adage. Today the Catholic Church met the president in a view to bring peace. But anyway, that is the kind of situation we have. But the Communist Party, you can get us on the Communist KE in X, a platform. You can get us on TikTok on the Communist Party of Kenya, and you can get us on Instagram on the Communist Party of Kenya. Also, Communist KE. You get us on the X platform.
Janet, are there questions from the audience?
Pardon?
Oh, okay. I was wondering if there's any questions from the audience.
Yeah, I haven't. Let's see if anyone want to ask anything?
I guess not. Thank you so much for joining us, Booker, and please join us again. And we are all very impressed with the Communist Party of Kenya.
Yeah. Thank you for all you. And everyone, I'm in a Discord server, and I was saying how I was kind of saying how the interview was going, and they all wish you very much luck in our, for July 7th and stuff. So they're looking towards you and seeing what's happening. So
yeah,
we will make them proud on July 7th.
Nice.
You always make us proud each time. I just before you came, I was telling Janet that the American communists have so much to learn from Kenya.
Yeah, we definitely do a lot. So I'm gonna make sure that they're watching all this. So
thank you very much, Janet and Aisha, and thank you a lot for the support that you have showed us over the years. In the last 3 years that we have had difficult times in the streets, we always receive warm messages from your podcast, and to let the people know about our struggles in Kenya and how we can interconnect with the rest of the global working class uprising.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much, and bye-bye, Aisha.
Bye.
Thank you, Booker.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. So next week we're having Ali Vargas on, so he'll talk about the Bolivian coup attempt and all the finer details. So I'll just quickly mention what happened. This was on Wednesday night. Well, it was Wednesday evening. It started where one general, Jose Juan Zuniga, just had a bunch of soldiers, and they drove up to the presidential palace. Oh, okay. So first, there was talk about Evo Morales running for another term in 2025, and then he got fired on Tuesday, and then he started ranting about how he's not going to let Evo Morales ruin the Constitution or whatnot, and that BS. And so then he went to the presidential palace with their guns, and then Luis Arce basically stood up to him and said, "No, and then Evo Morales sent out messages mobilizing all the militias that helped get Janine Áñez out. And so then there were thousands and thousands of people in Plaza Murillo. And then once that happened, one of the most awesome scenes is that there was this lady with a bottle who was hitting this soldier with a gun. And after that, the soldiers spooked, and then they just left. And then all the coup plotters got arrested. So what was different this time is that there were no fascist militias like the Union Juvenil Crucenista who were doing pogroms against indigenous people, etc. So those have all seemed to have been cleaned up since last time. He also wanted to free the political prisoner, quote unquote, Jose Luis Camacho and Janine Áñez, who are not political prisoners, but they're genocidal maniacs who belong in jail as they are right now.
Yeah.
And so that's basically it. That's basically what happened in Bolivia.
Yeah. So we'll have all next week and.
Yeah, and then let's see, there are debates this week. Oh, Georgia beat Portugal in Euro soccer.
Oh, good.
That was an upset victory.
Yay.
And let's see. Yeah, the debates were, oh my God, embarrassing.
This is what I said. I said, like, I'm sad and I don't know why, because I know our government's a joke, but it kind of made me sad watching that the other night. I'm like,
yeah, it's like, who is the Muppeteer now? Like, you don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Today there was this article in Axios called Two Bidens, and apparently Biden is okay between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., which sounds a lot like sundowning.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. Exactly what that is. Because they were like, they were trying to, like, he did a speech yesterday. So after everyone's like, oh, he was horrible on the debate and everyone's coming in. Then all of a sudden you saw on Twitter, like right after his speech, and I guess it wasn't even that long, and it was definitely on a teleprompter. So they're like, oh, he did so great, blah, blah, blah. Like trying to like.
Was it in the afternoon?
It was in the afternoon, yeah.
He was, okay, so definitely he's sundowning.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, like, I caregived for my mom through her dementia.
Yeah, and it's like so apparently his aides tightly manage his schedule, and yeah, I don't know who's actually leading or who's actually president, because I think in an average day he's probably too brain addled to do anything.
Yeah.
So then somebody in Washington Post wrote an article about how they think Hillary should. It's like, no.
I mean, it doesn't matter, because at this point, what they should have done is realize a year ago and actually ran just somebody else. I don't care if it was Newsom or whatever. It's going to be a horrible person anyways, but like they would have
wanted to skip the primaries. That's the thing. They didn't want to go through the primaries.
But they should have just went through the primaries and just said Joe's not running another term. Like he said when he started, he said he was only going to run one term.
Yeah, but I think they were afraid if they went to the primaries, somebody like Bernie will win, and they couldn't rig it this time like they did. So I think they just wanted to skip the primary.
Yeah. It's so ridiculous.
But I don't think that they'll have anything at the convention. I mean, it's so bizarre, but, and of course they make so much money off of Trump, like fundraising with the blue MAGA people, that they don't mind losing to Trump.
Norva says that Nancy Reagan. Oh wait, no, I just hit the wrong one.
Mayor Rat Buddha eggs. Yeah.
Butt eggs, but no, he said that Nancy Reagan is the power behind the throne.
Yeah, I mean, Ronald Reagan, like in '84. I mean, checking his videos in '84, he was much better off than Joe Biden is now, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. Yes. I mean, I was old enough to be paying attention then, and he definitely did not. I mean, he showed a little bit of it, or I don't know if they hit it better. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
No, but I swear that you saw more Reagan too at the end of his term. You're not really seeing Biden around. So I don't think Reagan was as far into it. Reagan was probably where Biden was 4 years ago, is where Reagan was.
Yeah. So I don't know what the plan is. Like, how can they drag him through November? Maybe.
And then just the VP becomes the president. But then I don't know if having Kamala there wouldn't help him either. So they'd have to switch up the vice president. Do you know what I mean? Because Kamala's not like that is going to be everyone's fair then. So then it goes to the vice president, and I don't think people are going to be confident in voting for Kamala in that place. I mean, and I'm not saying like anyone they pick, but I have a feeling it's going to be like Newsom or someone like that, someone that's.
But how are they going to do the first black women magic thing against Harris? Or will they start saying she's Indian now?
Yeah, probably. She's just one of those Asians.
Yeah.
We can't have that.
No.
I don't know. I really don't know. But also, I don't know what they think in the bubble. I don't know what they think is actually going on, like what Americans actually are talking about, because I don't think they pay attention.
They don't. They just kind of pay attention to themselves, but it's like what? Okay, so basically, one faction, James Carville. Yeah, okay, I know who. The Hillary section sent out the bat signal that Joe Biden is too old to run, and we need to find a replacement. But the Obama side is sending the opposite bat signal.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. I feel like. I mean, even Anderson Cooper was kind of coming down on Kamala Harris. You know what I mean? Like, Harris was trying to say that Joe was fine, and Anderson's like, he's not. You know, and if you lose Anderson Cooper, then.
Todd also said so. It seems like they don't act independently, so they got a bat signal from someone.
I don't know what the comments on the Trump-Pompeo rumor is, so I'm sorry. But
thank you again, Final Forest, though. We really appreciate it.
I'll
Google the Trump Pompeo if you can talk for a second.
Yeah, so the debate was I mean, Trump Trump.
Mike Pompeo not shutting the door to joining the second Trump administration. So it's mostly Mike Pompeo trying to lobby himself.
Oh. Didn't he just say a whole bunch of bad things about Trump?
No.
Or was it not Pompeo? Okay, so Pompeo's kept clean.
Yeah.
Has kept up the facade, because there was somebody that was. I know Pence came out against Trump, but there was somebody else, I thought, from his admin that came out against him. I only half pay attention now because, like...
I don't care enough. Yeah. I just remember Christine Nome and her dog, like, shooting her dog. I don't know why she wrote that in her biography if she wanted to be VP, but oh well.
Because these people don't think these things are wrong. They think, like... It's like these are my sins, but they're not sins. They're okay.
Killing a dog is not okay ever. Shooting a dog.
But when you don't have any empathy or care for other people, then you wouldn't even realize that shooting a dog is wrong.
Yeah. So that's basically it. Yeah, we don't have anything else. So join us next week for another episode of Realistically.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.